Have any of you all been hearing about that weird stuff going on along the border of Oregon and California? Some real end of days type ish. Apparently, over the past couple of days, they have found 80,000 dead birds along the border of Oregon and California. And listen, let me just say this. I do not wake up every day with the intentions of covering stories involving animals. This has kind of been a coincidence lately. I don't know what's going on, but I have been covering a lot of stories involving animals. And at this point, I'm thinking maybe I should just start my own animal rescue. Because apparently we got a lot of things happening in this country. And as far as these birds go, as far as I know right now, no, they're not a part of the ritual sacrifices happening in other parts of America. No, this is a different problem altogether. But yeah, over the past few days, 80,000 dead birds have turned up. Let's go ahead and dive into this article and try to figure out what's happening. 75,000 to 80,000 birds dead from botulism near Oregon border. Officials estimate tens of thousands of birds have recently died from botulism at Tule Lake National Wildlife Refuge near the Oregon-California border. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service spokesperson Jackie D'Almeida confirmed the botulism outbreak. It's the worst outbreak in the recorded history of the refuge and could continue into early October. Botulism is a serious illness caused by a natural toxin that attacks the nervous system and can lead to paralysis and death. Shallow, stagnant water provides the perfect environment for it to spread. Infected birds often show weakness, lethargy, and inability to walk, fly, or hold their head up, according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service cannot specify an exact number, but currently estimates 75,000 to 80,000 birds have died on Tule Lake National Wildlife Refuge due to the botulism outbreak. The only thing that will stop the spread of botulism is the return of rain and cooler weather, as botulism thrives in warm, stagnant water, wrote the Bird Alliance of Oregon. In the coming weeks, it's likely that tens of thousands more birds will die. Bird Alliance of Oregon blamed the outbreak on a warming climate. Historically, botulism outbreaks would have infected perhaps hundreds of birds, but as wetlands continue to shrink and dry up across the Intermountain West, birds are forced to smaller bodies of water. This creates larger concentrations of birds than would occur in a more natural system. In the Klamath Basin alone, more than 90% of wetlands have been lost. This packs birds into available wetlands. Combined with longer warm, dry periods in summer and early fall, this creates perfect conditions for massive non-natural outbreaks. The Bird Alliance said hundreds of birds have been treated and released back into the wild amid the outbreak. Bird Ally X's emergency botulism response team is operating its hospital at the refuge 7 days a week, saving as many lives as possible. Over the last 18 days, they have treated 835 water birds. With appropriate treatment, rescued birds have an excellent recovery rate. So far, 288 migratory water birds have been released back into the wild. Now, I know I've made this point before, but do you all ever look around and just feel like the world is falling apart all around us? And I get it, we live in a day and age where we're subjected to news from around the world. There's this 24/7 news cycle, and we're hearing constantly about all the bad things happening everywhere. I get that we used to not be subjected to this much news and information, like I get that. But at the same time, I just don't feel like the world was always this way. And I don't think that anyone or anything is going to convince me that it was. Because I feel like we used to live in a better place. where, yes, there were bad things happening, but not at the rate that they're happening now. You know, here, this story, you're not even going to hear about this anywhere else. You know, back in the day, if this happened 10 or 15 years ago, you would have heard about this by now. But in 2024, this is like the least of everyone's worries. What? 80,000 birds died in a couple days? Who gives a damn? What? Tens of thousands more in the future ahead? Who gives a damn? We're going to worry about the election. We're going to worry about this. We're going to worry about that. And I get it. In the grand scheme of things, these birds dying, it doesn't seem like a big deal. But it is a big deal. Because how can our earth sustain this? I mean, it's funny, but it's like, how can we as the human race survive and thrive at the rate that things are going now? Here's how I look at it. It's like today it's 80,000 dead birds. Tomorrow it's another 10,000 dead birds. And then the day after that, you forget what's happening to the birds because you're already back on the hamster wheel of the news cycle, having crazy story after crazy story thrown at you. And before you can get to the bottom of what's happening in one story, before you can acknowledge the problem in what's happening in one story, you got 15 other world-shattering events happening. And before you know it, I think all of us are going to be shaken back to reality. And we're going to look around not realizing how much destruction has been caused over the years. Like one day we're going to look around and we're not going to have to worry about 80,000 birds dying. We're not going to have to worry about news stories like that because there's not going to be any birds left. There's problems that we're having right now that we're not going to be experiencing in the future because some of these animals are going to go extinct. Some of these problems are going to go extinct. And we're going to be caught up on this hamster wheel, chasing the news cycle, crazy event after crazy event. So we're not really taking the time to really allow a lot of this stuff to really hit home for us. You know, a lot of this stuff doesn't even feel like real reality because we're not given enough time to really feel anything. You know what I mean? You don't have enough time to mourn or feel bad about this story before another one is thrown at you. So we don't even have time to sit down and really register what's going on here. 80,000 birds dead in this video. By the next video, it will be another thing and you won't even be worried about this anymore. You get what I'm saying, folks? So I think one day, when it's all said and done, we're going to look around and we're not going to realize just how much damage was caused. You know, how much damage went on around us that we didn't even realize was happening because we're just so caught up in the rat race. For example, it's like if you live with someone and you see them every day, the changes in their appearance as they age, it doesn't shock you because you're constantly looking at them. You're constantly subjected to them. But if someone sees someone that they haven't seen in 20 years, sometimes the difference in appearance can be shocking because you weren't there paying attention to them as they aged every day. You just saw this giant leap from one age to the next age. And I feel like that's how a lot of us are going to feel when the time actually comes that we actually stop and look at the world around us. Because right now, not enough people are looking at the world around them. You may be looking at the news about what's happening, but are you actually looking at the world? I think a lot of people are going to be in for a shock when they actually see what the world has actually come to. And it's not just about the damages that's happening in our environment. It's not just about the dangers to our wildlife. It's about, you know, how this is affecting us mentally, emotionally, spiritually in many ways. It's about all of that as well. How is this affecting us psychologically? It's having an effect on us for sure. And listen, I know a lot of people make everything biblical. They make everything about religion. You see a story like this and they're going to start preaching to you about Jesus coming back and it's the end of days. I get it. Listen, I'm not even trying to take a biblical approach here, but it really feels like sometimes when you look at what's going on in the world, it feels like the world is coming to an end. It honestly feels like the end of days. Because where do we honestly go from here? It doesn't feel like things are getting better. And if there was a such thing as the end of the world, then I kind of feel like this is kind of how it would look. Now, I'm sure things would get worse, but all I'm saying here is that when you look around at all of the problems, all of the crazy stuff going on, it's hard not to think that, hey, this kind of looks like the end of, maybe not the end of the world, but it's the end of the world as we know it. I think that's a better way to put it. Because when you say it's the end of the world, maybe that's too dramatic. And like I said, people add all of this biblical context to that. And I'm not saying there's a problem there. Believe what you want to believe in. But what I'm saying is this is the end of the world as we know it. I don't think we're going to go back to a place where times were as good as they were 20, 30 years ago. Okay, I feel like we're definitely going downhill. And as I was saying earlier, one day, it's like someone is going to pinch us and we're going to wake up and we're going to look around and we're going to be, even those of us who are paying attention, we're going to be dumbfounded at all of the damage that has been caused as the world has slipped into hyperspace and hyperdrive, and all of this crazy stuff is just happening 24/7, and no one seems to give a damn about anything anymore. But for now, let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe, ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all very soon in the next one.